He looked at my carry-on and my wrinkled travel clothes and decided in about 4 seconds that I was someone he could push around. I'd just driven 3 hours from the airport. My flight from DC was delayed again, then boarded and sat on the tarmac for 40 minutes while I watched my connection window close. By the time I landed in Tulsa and picked up my rental, it was past 9. I was tired in the way that lives behind your eyes. My mom had called twice during the drive, both times starting with, "I just want to make sure you're not upset," which told me everything I needed to know before I even pulled into the driveway. The house looked the same from outside, white trim. The rose bush my dad planted the year I was born, still there by the front steps, even though nobody had pruned it in years. The porch light was on. So were the lights in the kitchen and the living room, which meant my mom was still awake, which meant she was nervous. I grabbed my bag and my laptop case and walked up the front steps. The door opened before I knocked. He was standing in the doorway, not my mom, him. He was a large man. The kind of large that comes from years of assuming everyone will move out of his way. Gray at the temples. A short sleeve buttoned down untucked over slacks, like he'd dressed up slightly and then thought better of it. He had a beer in his hand and an expression that said he was already deciding what category to put me in. "You must be Renata," he said. Not a question. "I am," I said. He stepped back just enough to let me through, which meant I had to turn slightly sideways with my bag. He didn't offer to help. He didn't move the shoes he'd left in the entryway either, 2 large loafers right in the middle of the mat where my mom always kept a clear path. My mom appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She looked older than I remembered from Christmas, which had only been 7 months ago. Not old, just tired. Her eyes found mine and did that thing they do, that quick scan to see if I was about to cause a problem. "Sweetheart," she said, and hugged me, and I held on a beat longer than usual. "How was the drive?" she asked. "Long," I said, "but I'm here." Behind me, her boyfriend. I'll call him my mom's boyfriend, because that's what he was, regardless of what he seemed to think, dropped back onto the couch and picked up the remote. The TV was loud. Some news program. He turned it up when I came in, or maybe I just noticed it more once I was inside. "Hungry?" my mom asked. "A little." I saved you a plate. Pot roast. Let me heat it up. She disappeared into the kitchen. I stood in the living room with my bag, looking for somewhere to put it that wasn't in front of the TV. "You can put that in the hall closet," he said without looking up. "I'll take it to my room," I said. He glanced over. "Your room is the guest room now. Don't leave your stuff in the hall." I looked at him for a second. Just looked. "I know where my old room is," I said and carried my bags up the stairs. My mom bought that house in 2003 with money she'd saved for 11 years working as a dental hygienist. She bought it alone, 2 years after my dad passed, because she said she needed something that was hers. She repainted every room herself. She refinished the hardwood floors with my uncle's help over a single long weekend in October. She planted that rose bush. She kept every receipt in a shoebox labeled house in her handwriting on the side. She'd been seeing her boyfriend for about 14 months. I'd met him once before, briefly, at Easter. He seemed fine then. Loud, maybe? A little too comfortable telling stories about himself. But fine. Something had shifted. I noticed it in the small things. The way she looked at him before she spoke, like she was calculating odds. The coasters she put on every surface. She'd never cared about coasters before. The pantry, reorganized in a way that looked nothing like her system. The reading chair she'd had for 15 years, moved from the window to the corner. When I asked her about it later, she said he found the morning light annoying. She'd moved her reading chair away from the window because he found the light annoying. I was still thinking about that when I came back downstairs and found him standing at the kitchen doorway, talking to my mom's back while she heated up my food. "I told you I don't want the leftovers taking up the whole top shelf," he was saying. "That's where I keep my drinks. I just moved them so Renata could. She's one person. She doesn't need the whole shelf." My mom turned around and saw me in the doorway and did that thing again. The quick look. "Please don't." I sat down at the kitchen table and didn't say anything. He came and sat at the head of the table. That had been my dad's seat, and then for 20 years it had been nobody's seat because my mom left it empty. Now it was his. So what do you do? He asked me. I work in Washington, I said. Doing what? Government work, I said. He made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. That covers a lot of ground. It does, I agreed. My mom set a plate in front of me and sat down across from me, and for a few minutes, we just talked. She asked about my flight, about my apartment, about whether I'd seen her friend Deborah, who'd moved to Virginia last year. Normal things, the kind of talk that exists to fill space until everyone relaxes. He interrupted twice, both times to redirect the conversation back to himself. First to mention a consulting project he was working on, then to talk about a golf trip he was planning in the fall. My mom laughed at both stories. I ate my pot roast. The next morning I was up at 5:30 out of habit and sat at the kitchen table with coffee watching the backyard fill up with pale gray light. My mom had bird feeders on the back fence. 3 of them. She'd had birds coming to that yard for as long as I could remember. Cardinals mostly. And in the spring, the occasional bluebird that made her genuinely, unreservedly happy in a way I found touching. She came down around 7. We had an hour before he was up. How are you really doing? I asked her. She wrapped her hands around her mug. I'm good. I know the house is a little different. Mom. Ibe. She was quiet. You moved your chair, I said. It's fine. It's a small thing. He speaks to you like you work for him. She looked at the window, at the bird feeders. He's been under a lot of pressure lately with the consulting work. He gets short. He doesn't mean anything by it. Has he always been like this? Renata. I'm asking. She was quiet for a moment. He's under pressure, she said again. He came downstairs at 8:15. He was wearing a polo shirt and had his phone in his hand and came into the kitchen talking, mid-sentence about something, not to us specifically, more just talking in our direction, while he opened the fridge. We're out of the good orange juice, he announced. I can pick some up today, my mom said immediately. I thought you were going to get it yesterday. I just. If you say you're going to do something, you should do it. He found something else in the fridge that apparently satisfied him and closed it. Leaned against the counter. Looked at me. What's your plan today? Spending time with my mom, I said. She's got things to do. We're flexible, I said. He looked at me the way people look at something they're trying to decide is worth their time. Then he shrugged and looked at his phone. I need the car this afternoon, he said, to my mom. Okay, she said. What time? 1 or 2. Don't make plans. We had plans at 1:30. A lunch reservation my mom had made 3 weeks ago at a restaurant she'd been wanting to try. She'd mentioned it to me on the phone in the way she mentions things she's excited about, which is casually so you won't hear how excited she is. She looked at me. That look again? We have that lunch, I said. He didn't look up from his phone. Change it. It's a reservation, I said. She made it weeks ago. Then she can make it again. I need the car. There are 2 cars in the driveway, I said. He put his phone down on the counter and looked at me with a different kind of attention. The other car is mine. The other car is registered to my mother, I said. The kitchen got quiet. Renata, my mom said softly. I know what cars are in this driveway, he said. His voice had dropped in the particular way voices do when someone decides to stop being casual about something. And I know that in this house, I'm the one who manages logistics. Your mother and I have an arrangement. An arrangement, I repeated. That's right. He picked his phone back up. You're a guest here. I'd appreciate if you'd act like one. I looked at him. I thought about several things I could say. I said none of them. We'll figure out the car, I told my mom. And I excused myself and went upstairs. We went to lunch. My mom drove. We had the salmon and a glass of wine each, and she laughed, really laughed, twice, which felt like a victory. She looked lighter away from the house. She looked like herself. On the way home, she said, he's not always like that. I know, I said, because sometimes that's what you say. He was very kind when I first met him. He still can be. I know. I just don't want you to go home thinking. Mom. I put my hand over hers on the center console. I love you. I'm not going anywhere until Sunday. She nodded, kept her eyes on the road. I just think. she said slowly, like she was choosing each word off a shelf. That I've been alone a long time. And it's hard to be alone. And I know that's not an excuse for, she stopped. Started again. I just got used to it. The adjusting. You shouldn't have to adjust yourself that much, I said. She didn't answer. We drove the rest of the way in the comfortable silence of two people who love each other and disagree. That evening he made dinner, which surprised me. He was actually a decent cook, nothing elaborate, pasta with a red sauce, garlic bread from the oven, and for about 45 minutes things were almost normal. He told a story about a hunting trip that was mildly entertaining. My mom relaxed visibly. I let myself relax a little too. Then he poured himself a third glass of wine, and the topic turned to my work. And something shifted in him, the way it does in certain men, when they sense they're not the most important person in a room. Government work, he said again, in the same half-amused tone from the night before. You're what, a policy person? Analyst? Something like that, I said. How old are you, 30? 32. And you've been in D.C. since college? Since law school. He paused. You're a lawyer. I passed the bar 8 years ago, I said. Huh. He processed this in a way that seemed to reclassify rather than impress. Lots of lawyers in D.C. Not exactly a rare species. No, I agreed. Who do you work for? A firm? The federal government, I said. Which department? I'm not able to get into the specifics, I said, which was true, though not for the reasons he was probably assuming. He laughed, not a warm laugh, not able to or not wanting to. Both tonight, I said pleasantly. His jaw tightened slightly. You know, your mother mentioned you work long hours. Barely visit. That kind of dedication is admirable. But you've got to wonder what it costs you. My mom went very still. What do you mean? I asked. Just that a woman your age, no husband, no kids, living alone in an apartment in D.C. He spread his hands in a gesture that suggested he found this sad. It seems like a lonely life is all. You sacrifice everything for a career, and what do you have to show for it? My work, I said. Right. He nodded, slowly. Your government work. He said it the way you say something when you think it means less than the person saying it believes. I took a sip of water. I'm proud of my daughter, my mom said. Her voice was careful. She's worked very hard. I'm sure she has, he said. I'm just saying, there's more to life than titles. There is, I agreed. Family, for instance. He looked at me. I looked back. Right, he said finally, and picked up his fork. The moment that changed things happened the next afternoon. I was on a call in the kitchen. My supervisor needed a briefing on a case we'd been building for several months. The kind of call that can't wait and can't be rescheduled. I'd taken it at the kitchen table because my laptop was there and the signal was strongest. The call was sensitive enough that I was speaking quietly and carefully, and I had my notebook open and I was focused. He came downstairs and walked into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. I held up one finger, the universal signal for 1 moment please, and kept talking. He closed the refrigerator, came to stand near the table, waited maybe 15 seconds. I need to talk to you, he said. I pointed to the phone and shook my head. I need to use the kitchen, he said louder. I turned slightly away and kept my voice low and even. Hey, he pulled out the chair across from me and sat down heavily. I'm talking to you. I put my hand over the phone. I'm on a work call. I'll be done in 10 minutes. You can finish it somewhere else. This is a work call that cannot. This is my house, he said, and his voice had the full weight of a man who's used to that sentence settling arguments. When I need the kitchen, I use the kitchen. You want to take calls, you take them upstairs. I looked at him. I looked at him for a long 3 seconds. My supervisor was still on the line. I could hear the ambient sound of her office. I'll need to call you back, I said into the phone. Yes, 20 minutes. I ended the call. He sat back like he'd won something. Here's what I need to discuss, he said, and launched into something about grocery deliveries and scheduling that I stopped tracking after about 10 seconds because I was busy making a decision. He was still talking when my mom came in from the backyard. garden gloves in hand, and saw us at the table and froze in the doorway the way you freeze when you walk into a room and can feel the temperature before you see what's causing it. Mark, she started. I'm just explaining to your daughter how the house works, he said without looking at my mom. She knows how the house works, my mom said. She grew up here. She grew up here 20 years ago. He looked at her now. Things are different. And you've let her run around this visit like she's in charge of something, and it's created confusion. I haven't. You moved the whole refrigerator around for her. You changed our plans. You let her talk back to me at the dinner table and you said nothing. He set his hands flat on the table. I've been very patient, but I want to be clear, in this house I run things. That's the arrangement. It works because we both respect it. He looked at me. Your daughter needs to understand that. My mom looked at me. I looked at her. I thought about my reading chair by the window. I thought about the lunch reservation. I thought about the way she'd said I got used to the adjusting, and the specific sadness in that sentence that she probably didn't even hear in herself anymore. I stood up. I walked to the entryway where I'd left my work bag the night before. I unzipped the front pocket and took out the badge wallet I carry everywhere, because I am legally required to have it accessible at all times. I walked back to the kitchen. I set it open on the table in front of him. He looked down. His expression did the thing expressions do when the brain is receiving information it wasn't expecting and isn't sure how to process. The badge said in clear print what I was, a special agent with the FBI, attached to the Financial Crimes Unit, with a federal commission that superseded every piece of organizational authority he had ever held in whatever private sector consulting arrangement he decided made him the most important man in any room. He looked up at me. I work in federal law enforcement, I said. I've been doing it for 8 years. I don't talk about it because my cases are active and my information is protected, not because I'm embarrassed about what I do. I picked up the badge wallet and put it back in my bag. I also have a law degree from Georgetown, and I have spent the last 2 years building fraud cases against people who think being loud and certain is the same as being right. I looked at him evenly. It is not. He didn't say anything. My mother bought this house with her own money, I said. She has owned it for 21 years. Her name is on the deed, on the mortgage history, on every piece of paperwork in that shoebox in the hall closet that you probably haven't noticed. She runs this house. She has always run this house. I picked up my phone from the table. And I am not a guest here. I am her daughter. There is a difference. The kitchen was completely silent. He looked at my mom. She was standing in the doorway, still wearing her garden gloves and looking at him with an expression I hadn't seen on her face in a long time. Not fear. Not that careful calculation. Something different. Something older and quieter, and much more certain. Mark, she said, and her voice was steady, I think you should go stay at your own place tonight. He blinked. Linda. I need some time with my daughter, she said. Please. He sat there for another moment. Then he pushed back from the table and went upstairs. We heard him moving around, the sounds of a bag being packed. 20 minutes later, he came back down with a duffel and his keys and walked past the kitchen without stopping and out the front door, and the house settled into the specific quiet that happens when a noise you'd stopped noticing finally disappears. My mom stood at the kitchen window watching his car back out of the driveway. I stood next to her. I knew, she said quietly. Some part of me knew the whole time. I know, I said. I just didn't, she stopped. I didn't want to admit that I'd been wrong about him. You weren't wrong about everything, I said. You were wrong about whether it was worth adjusting your whole life for. She was quiet. Outside, the cardinal she loved came back to the bird feeder on the fence. Then a second one. I'm going to move my chair back, she said. Good, I said. And I'm going to call Deborah, she said. She's been asking me to come visit for months. I keep saying I'll go when things settle down. Things are settling down right now, I said. She laughed, a real one, the kind I recognized. I put my arm around her shoulders and we stood there in the kitchen that was hers, in the house that was hers, watching the cardinals come back to the yard she'd tended for 20 years. And for the first time since I'd arrived, the silence felt like something that belonged to us. I called my supervisor back 22 minutes after I said I would. She didn't comment on the delay. We finished the briefing. I stayed through Sunday as I'd planned, and the weekend was easy in a way the first day hadn't been. Late mornings, long drives with no destination, my mom pointing out things along the back roads she thought I'd find interesting, the way she always did. On Sunday morning before my flight, she stood on the porch in her robe while I loaded my rental, and when I hugged her goodbye, she held on the same way I had when I arrived. "Thank you," she said into my shoulder. "You did it," I told her. I just stood there. She pulled back and looked at me the way mothers look at you when they know you're being modest, and they love you for it. "Drive safe," she said. I drove back to Tulsa in the early morning light, the highway empty, the fields on both sides going gold. My phone stayed quiet. The case files waited on my laptop in the back seat. The work would be there Monday morning, the same as always. Careful and slow and entirely mine. Some things are worth being patient for. I keep thinking about my mom's reading chair. Something that small shouldn't carry that much weight, but it does. She moved it away from the window she loved, the one that caught the morning light, the one she'd sat in for 15 years with her coffee and her library books, because he found the glare inconvenient. She didn't fight it. She just moved the chair and adjusted, the way she'd been adjusting to him in 100 small ways she probably stopped noticing. That's how it works, I've learned. It's never one big thing. It's the chair, and then the refrigerator shelf, and then the lunch reservation, and then the tone of voice. And by the time someone's rearranged enough of your life around their comfort, you've forgotten what it looked like before. You call it compromise. You call it keeping the peace. You tell your daughter he's under pressure and he doesn't mean anything by it. I don't say this to judge her. I say it because I almost didn't come that weekend. I had a case filing due and a backlog of work, and I told myself she was fine, that I'd visit next month when things quieted down. I almost let the quiet accumulate another few weeks. That matters to me now. What I know about the kind of man Mark was, not from that weekend specifically, but from 8 years of working fraud and financial crimes, is that he wasn't unusual. He was ordinary. Men like him count on the people around them being too tired, too polite, or too uncertain of themselves to push back. They read a room fast, and they find the path of least resistance, and they walk it confidently, and that confidence is usually enough. Most of the time, nobody checks. My mom is one of the most genuinely good people I know. She worked 30 years in a profession that requires patience and precision in care. She raised me mostly alone. She kept every receipt from the house she bought herself in a labeled shoebox, because she is the kind of person who does things correctly and thoroughly and without needing anyone to notice. That goodness is real. It just doesn't protect you from someone who mistakes kindness for a weakness to be managed. What I hope she takes from that weekend, and what I keep coming back to myself, is that knowing who you are is not enough if you never make it visible. I carried a federal badge for 8 years without telling my mother what I actually did. I thought I was protecting her from worry. What I was actually doing was making it easier for someone to look at me and see a nobody, a quiet woman with vague government work and no obvious authority. The information existed. I just hadn't offered it. There's something I've come to believe through the work I do and the cases I build, that the truth has a particular kind of patience. It doesn't announce itself. It waits. And eventually, always, the architecture that someone built on false assumptions runs into the fact of what's actually true, and the whole thing has to be renegotiated from the ground up. Mark thought he was in charge of something. He was in charge of nothing. The house was my mother's. The cars were my mother's. The arrangements were ones she could revoke the moment she decided to. And I was not, by any measure he'd failed to take, the least powerful person in that kitchen. He just hadn't checked. My mom moved her chair back to the window the morning after he left. She texted me a photo of it. Morning light on the armrest, her coffee mug on the side table, the cardinal on the fence in the background. No caption. She didn't need one. I saved the photo. I look at it sometimes when a case gets long and the work gets heavy, and I need to remember why the patience is worth it. Some things take time to put right, but they do get put right.